fellow apocalypse survivors, and another episode of Dicing While at Distance. And yeah, that's what I'm calling it. Hashtag Dicing Dungeons and Distance, or Distancings and Dungeon. I don't know, but I'm hashtagging it. I'm copywriting it. It's mine. Well, actually, it's somebody else's, but it's mine, yeah. And it is I, your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the reasonable voice in the unreasonable, the caustic gatekeeper, the troublemaker, the cage rattler, the OGGM with another OGGM adventure. And we are back for more Mega Dungeon March. March. And if you're like me, you are trapped at home under this curfew, this iron choky stupidity, and if you're like me, you're worrying about how long before I lose it, or how long before they kick open my door and take my dice away from me. Yeah, fight the power. All right, so today we are going back to our pyramid, our time-traveling pyramid, to explore our first encounter in wandering monsters, because wandering monsters are a huge factor in this type of mega dungeon environment, because a mega dungeon is so proactive to that flow, that idea that things are going to constantly change. And if you go in a room and then you come back to that room later, it might not be the same thing. And the great thing about mega dungeons, as we've already discussed, is that rule of gonzo, that you can occasionally throw something in that makes no bloody sense whatsoever because it's a mega dungeon. And there's portals and time travel and weirdness, so along with all the normal, rust monsters and goblins and gelatinous cubes, you can have a clown with a chainsaw, because mega dungeon. So since we are having this Egyptian theme sort of overall, and since we've already split up our dungeon into these areas, and let us just remind you what our areas are again, in case you've forgotten. So we've got our three entrances. We've got area number 1, which is going to be our classic Egyptian themed. We've got area number 2, which is going to be these elemental nodes of these invaders from other dimensions that are coming through the time warp to slowly take over the dungeon. We've got area 3 and 4, which is the labs, the businesses, because we're using the idea of shopping, businesses, home. This for sort of that super mall Zabusta kind of Japanese idea, everything in one place. So this place has its shopping down here, which has now been taken over. It has its labs up here, which has now been taken over here. And we have the living quarters up here. So our labs, which is also the center of our time anomaly, we're going to have our whatever they were doing before they started messing around with time travel, and then we've decided that it's sort of robot nanotech Skynet type of ship. And then their lab when they decided to start get all, Stranger Things time traveling. And up here we have our living quarters. So let's focus on our Egyptian area and come up with a wandering monster table that, fits the theme, and occasionally throw in a few weird things. So what are some classic Egyptian tropes? Mummies, of course. Snake people. Jackal people, crocodiles, so mummies, giant snakes, crocodiles, jackal people, which are, gnolls, I think, in D&D. Lesser undead like zombies. And then we'll throw in snake people, cultists, and then we'll throw in a couple dungeon, cleaning stuff like a gelatinous cube, because gelatinous cubes are just freaking awesome. And then we'll throw in one or two weird things. First, we'll throw in invaders from the next section over. So invaders from elemental node. And let's throw in one more weird thing. One thing that doesn't fit at all because of the time travel, like cowboys or Nazis or clowns with chainsaws. So but still to stick with that Indiana Jones theme of that area, let's have some time lost archaeologists. So, they can run into Indiana Jones and Nash Wells and Laura Croft type trope characters who aren't those characters, but are like, suddenly they run into a Doc Savage, shadow type pulp character from that era, from that Indiana Jones idea. So you got mummies and zombies, and then in the next room they got a guy with 2 guns going, "I'm Doc Solomon, man of adventure," blam blam, and they're like, "What? How did you die?" Yeah. So this is what our wandering monster table looks like: mummies, giant snakes, crocodiles, gnolls, zombies, snake people, cultists, gelatinous cube, invaders from the elemental node. And that'll probably be like Earth elementals, because we've already said it's mostly Earth elementals. And then time lost archaeologists, so they could run into a Laura Croft type ripoff. Yeah. So how often do wandering monsters spawn? I like to use the 1 on a d6 roll. And I like to make my players roll the d6 now. I used to roll it, but I think it's more fun to make them roll it so they know they're responsible for their fate. And then increase that to, a 1, 2, 3 on a d6 if they're making a lot of noise. Because that's going to attract, wandering monsters. So a big fight with a lot of clanging and exploding and stuff with something can draw another group to go, "Hey, what's that noise? There's something we can go eat." So yeah. And then, I check like randomly, whenever. I don't have a rhyme or reason, but if you want to have a formula, once every 10 minutes, or at every crossroad. When they're moving, and when they're resting, you check like once or twice per rest. Per watch, I mean. So, normally 1 on a d6, 1 to 3 on a d6 if they're making a lot of noise. You check like every 10 minutes or so, or at every crossroad, or whenever you think they've done something to attract attention, like making noise. And then if they're resting, you check once or twice per watch. So if there's 4 watches in a long rest, you roll at the beginning of the rest, at the end of the rest, and again, make the players roll. And then, how do you want to divide this up? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, we've got 10. So we're just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now, most of these already have stats in the monster manual. I mean, mummies are pretty, standard. Giant snakes, pretty standard. Crocodiles, pretty standard. Gnolls, pretty standard. Zombies, pretty standard. Snake people, that might, need some work. Cultists are just, first level humans with maybe 1/3 level human in amongst them. Casters. Gelatinous cube, again, already done for us. Earth elementals and earth mephits and stuff like that, already done for us. And so this, the NPC, the wandering archaeologist, that doesn't really need to be statted out. That's just something your imagination, you take standard, 2nd level rogue or something like that, and just go, okay, this is, a Laura Croft ripoff, and her name is Laura Craft, or Albuquerque Smith, or something like that. So there you go. Now remember, because we got the nanites floating through here, we can occasionally weird some of this shit up, because we can make these zombies nanite zombies, and we can make the mummies nanite mummies. So we can sort of weird this shit up a little. But our main weirdness is down here with our invaders from the elemental node and our archaeologists. Other than that, it's pretty standard Egyptian trope theme stuff. How did they get there? Well, like we said, when it time traveled here, people moved in because they were already desert based and they saw this thing and this was the entrance that was easiest for them to get to, and they just started repeating what they've already seen, and the place already had sort of an Egyptian motif because our people from the future built a pyramid, so of course they're going to be like, yeah, let's all Luxor the fuck out of it and make it look like an Egyptian pyramid because that's what sells. It's what pops. Statues with people with hawks for heads. That's, yeah, bam, we're pyramid co. Yeah, bringing the sun to the darkness of corporate world or whatever. I don't know. So these are our wandering monsters for our Egyptian themed area. They provide that flow. They also give you sort of general ideas. If the party goes in, clears out a room, and then comes back to that room like 2-3 hours later, you can roll a couple wandering monster checks and see if like a gelatinous cube has moved in or a mummy. Or if months have passed on and then they go back to the room, maybe something has moved in and established like a whole little new thing and changed the story and the flow of the dungeon. So there we go. Wandering monsters, very important. The next most important things, of course, is traps and puzzles. And again, because this is the rule of Gonzo, along with all your normal pit traps and slicing blade traps and laser beam traps, you can throw in weird shit. You can throw in talking skulls that ask you a riddle, and if you get it correct, they grant you a wish. You can throw in giant mushrooms from Mars whose spores have a random table of doing 20 different things depending upon what you roll. That's the great thing about this environment, is for everything that as you expect from a normal dungeon, you can have 2 or 3 things that make no sense whatsoever because it's a mega dungeon, and then mega dungeons just allow for that rule of Gonzo. So there's our wandering monster table. I will post this up on the blog. Check the link down below for the OGGM Adventures blog. Stay safe during this time of weirdness. We'll be back later with our first encounter. Until then, I will talk to you later, losers.